Jake Paul's California mansion has been raided by the FBI, multiple news organizations report. You can see in this aerial footage agents in uniform outside his home in Calabasas.
When a name like Anthony Joshua is mentioned, it symbolizes more than a moment. It represents what happens when protection fades and a fighter faces something real, uncontrolled, unscripted, and uncompromising. At the highest level, true competition reveals flaws that hype contracts and marketing can only hide for so long.
Paul's attorney says he was out of state and not at his Calabasas home during that raid today. The FBI says they're investigating allegations of criminal acts for an incident that he's known for being in the public eye. But today, YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.
This story stays volatile because every accusation sparks another clip interview denial or collapse, creating a loop where uncertainty becomes entertainment. Controversy fuels attention, and attention sustains a cycle across MMA and boxing media. From an AVD standpoint, it works because it combines fierce scandal, authority, and unanswered questions. Viewers stay hooked by the belief that the next reveal could finally confirm their suspicions or completely overturn what they thought was true, keeping debate alive and engagement endlessly rolling.
Because of the weight difference in there, I only know one man that'll do the weight difference like that, and that's the Bronze Bomber. For me, in my opinion, I think it's scripted a little bit because, of the weight difference, and Joshua is a former champion, and also he's current, he's active, and this is going to be the first time that we see Paul fighting an active fighter. We seen the Mike Tyson, that was all fun, that was cute, it's fun and games and stuff, but now you're dealing with a real professional.
At its core, this isn't only about Jake Paul as a person, but a wider cultural clash between traditional combat sports values and influencer era promotion. It's a space where control, virality, and image can outweigh the raw honesty that once defined elite fighting. Whether Paul ever sheds his credibility cloud won't be decided by speeches or online clapbacks, but by actions. If future bouts favor real risk over comfort, transparency over control, and true competition over spectacle, perceptions can shift. If the same patterns continue, fans will conclude the illusion was never authentic to begin with.
Of hours, there's been some reports about an apparent leaked script. Have you seen this?
Move on. If people think that he's going to do a quick two-step and do this, and this, I hope he just goes out and takes his head clean off with the first punch and lets him know Tommy Fury actually is. There's one interview, and I'm going to name it now, Lyndon Arthur, absolute fantastic, that man. I don't read that much on social media because it's all bullshit, but Lyndon Arthur, thank you very much. From me to you, you said something about Tommy being a proper fighter, can really punch, one of the hardest punches he's been in. Now, for Lyndon Arthur to go and say that, Lyndon Arthur is a proper hard, tough man. We all know that. So, Lyndon, respect. Thank you.
The shift in how Jake Paul was viewed didn't come from one punch or one night, but from a growing realization among boxing and MMA fans that spectacle branding and selective matchmaking were replacing true competition. As names like Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Oscar de la Hoya, Dana White, and Michael Bisping entered the conversation, audiences began seeing Paul less as a traditional fighter and more as a symbol of manufactured era one, where stories promoted more aggressively than merit earned in the ring.
At any point, did you start to take your foot off the gas just a little bit because you noticed he was tiring out?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a bit. I wanted to give the fans a show, but I didn't want to hurt someone that didn't need to be hurt.
Did you carry Mike?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, there was a point where, I was just like, okay, he's not really engaging back. And so I don't know if he's tired or whatever. And I could just tell, his age was showing a little bit. And I just have so much respect for him. And that violence war thing between us, after he slapped me, I wanted to, be aggressive and take him down and knock him out and all that stuff. But that kind of went away as the rounds went on.
In combat sports, true reckonings are rarely clean or cinematic. This narrative exists in a gray area where public perception, quiet doubt, and years of online debate collide. Jake Paul's rise was never only about wins or losses, but about how those victories were framed, justified, defended, and amplified until fans began questioning whether they were watching real competition or carefully produced content. When allegations of rigged fights emerged, they didn't come from nowhere. Established figures like Deontay Wilder publicly questioned the legitimacy of Paul's bouts, while Oscar de la Hoya echoed concerns many insiders had long whispered. Even casual viewers noticed recurring patterns, glove sizes, shortened rounds opponent selection, and promotional control that felt less like traditional professional boxing and more like exhibitions engineered to protect a narrative rather than test it.
Are you on performance-enhancing drugs?
If taking Viagra counts, then yes.
I'm gonna need a yes or a no.
No.
It's true.
The narrative escalated when Jake Paul admitted he eased off at certain moments. On its own, that comment could be framed as sportsmanship, but in context it fueled deeper doubt. At the elite level of boxing, managing danger for an opponent isn't part of the job. Once the clip spread online, it strengthened the belief that some fights were paced for appearance rather than decided by pure competitive urgency. Drug testing then became another flashpoint. Dana White's public challenge wasn't gossip, but a call for transparency from someone questioning legitimacy. When no independently verified results were released, critics filled the gap with speculation, connecting visible physical changes, past resistance to strict anti-doping clauses, and insider remarks into a narrative that refused to fade from public debate.
Publicly stated that I use cocaine. I do not. So I told you could randomly cocaine test me for the next 10 years. I believe that you're a cheater, and I believe that you use steroids. So I want to randomly steroid test you for the next 2 years. And that thing that you came out with today, nobody on earth thinks that you really wrote that. You're too stupid.
Medical opinion, social media reactions, and commentary from figures like Dylan Danish further intensified the discussion. Not because any single accusation proved wrongdoing, but because the growing volume of voices created an environment where silence felt less convincing than transparency. Each refusal to release documentation became for fans another unresolved entry in an already long list of doubts. Promotion responses from MVP executives relied heavily on legal phrasing and defamation warnings. While such strategies are common in high-stakes business, they often clash with fight culture, where openness earns credibility. Legal threats don't reassure audiences that results are authentic. Instead, they suggest that protecting image has taken priority over the kind of accountability fans expect from real competition.
Brought it up, wants to do testing. And he wants to do a set date before the fight. Okay? So he did the cycle, he did whatever, and now he's going to try to take a piss test and clear it and be like, oh, I'm clean. That doesn't count. Okay? It doesn't count. With the money that he has, you can have a doctor clean your system in over 24 hours. Cheeto Vera just went on that podcast and said, you know that. So him doing this is another scam that he does. He's a bullshit artist. He just lies. Everybody knows he's on juice. He's admitted taking peptides. There's doctors that have him in the office saying we're giving him peptides on their website. So like, it's just bullshit. And I don't care about the steroids thing. It's just like, what are we doing here? He has every advantage. He gets to pick the refs. He gets to pick the fucking judge.
Dylan Danis, despite his own history with Jake Paul, shared images that reignited scrutiny. Michael Bisping's criticism carried more weight because it was measured and informed, noting that Paul's opponents were often retired, aging, or celebrity adjacent. He also highlighted that Paul's lone fight against a peer-level boxer Tommy Fury ended in a low-cent outcome many critics cite as proof that legitimacy can't be claimed without consistently facing prime motivated professionals.
There has never once in Jake Paul's career been any talk of that sort, of anything to do with the fight being anything but a real fight that has exactly the same situation as any professional fight. And that's exactly the same thing here for the Anthony Joshua fight. It's just beyond mind-blowing that people would think that. Anthony Joshua was on record saying that if he didn't finish him in the first round, that would be disappointing, that it would be a failure. The narrative changed as we got closer to fight night and obviously post-fight, and I understand why, but they were pretty adamant it would take max 2 rounds.
The FBI raid narrative added another layer to public perception because even without charges or clear outcomes, repeated closeness to controversy shapes belief. In combat sports where reputation can matter as much as a record, each headline deepens the sense that turmoil trails Paul wherever spectacle is being sold.
In the public eye, but today, YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.
Speaker One's core argument is not that every fight was staged or every allegation accurate, but that the structure surrounding Jake Paul's boxing career appears carefully engineered, from opponent selection to promotional framing. It creates an environment where fans are encouraged to believe in authenticity, without being shown the kind of evidence that traditionally earns trust in combat sports. Legal processes may take years to resolve, but for Anthony Joshua, healing does not follow court timelines. Grief moves on its own schedule, and even if accountability is pursued, no ruling can undo what was lost or reverse the moment when everything changed. Gerald Miller's emotional reaction adds another dimension, revealing how even strained relationships dissolve when mortality enters the picture. Tragedy has a way of stripping rivalry down to its core, reminding people that competition is temporary while empathy is instinctive when circumstances become undeniably human. As fans watch this unfold, they are forced to confront their own role. Clicks, comments, and outrage do not exist in a vacuum. They help fuel narratives that can deepen real pain. Voices like Johnny Nelson's call for restraint reminding audiences that behind every update is a person trying to survive something unimaginable. Anthony Joshua's future in boxing will always be debated, but his future as a man living with loss carries greater weight. Whether he returns to the ring or not, this chapter will shape how he approaches life, relationships, and responsibility far beyond competition. The broader lesson for combat sports is uncomfortable but necessary. If the culture continues to reward recklessness, without reflection, more lives risk being caught in the aftermath. Figures like Eddie Hearn and Tyson Fury are attempting to steer the conversation back toward accountability, not spectacle. Ultimately, this story is not about choosing heroes or villains. It is about recognizing consequences. When lives are lost and trauma lingers, the only meaningful response is honesty, restraint, and learning. Whether boxing lessons may determine if tragedies like this remain rare or become routine. What lingers most when thinking about Anthony Joshua is not lawsuits or headlines, but the silence that follows disaster. When the noise fades and cameras tear away, a man is left replaying moments he cannot change. No advice from Eddie Hearn or sympathy from Tyson Fury can fully prepare someone for long nights where memory becomes the most relentless opponent they have ever faced. It is easy for fans to reduce situations like this to sides, choosing Anthony Joshua or Jake Paul way they would pick a fight outcome. Real life does not operate on scorecards. Johnny Nelson continues to remind people that grief is indifferent to online debates because loss is permanent regardless of opinion. From a human perspective, Eddie Hearn's stance feels less like management and more like guardianship. When someone you've worked with for years nearly loses everything in seconds, professionalism turns protective, and his blunt tone reflects a desire to shield Joshua from a system that moves on too quickly. Tyson Fury's response resonates because he understands chaos intimately, knowing how fast narratives can flip from triumph to devastation. When he speaks about families and loved ones, it feels less like commentary and more like a warning to the fight world that bravado can never replace fragility. Voices such as Duke McKenzie and Johnny Nelson matter because they represent experience rather than hype. When they criticize Jake Paul, it feels rooted in concern for a sport they care about, frustrated by a culture where spectacle often outruns responsibility and leaves people exposed to consequences they never anticipated. The detail that Anthony Joshua survived while sitting in the back seat carries a heavy emotional weight. Survival itself can feel like punishment when paired with loss, and that reality alone can reshape identity, turning confidence into caution and ambition into reflection almost overnight. For Jake Paul, being tied to this narrative may become defining not because of court outcomes, but because public perception hardens quickly. Once a name becomes associated with recklessness and tragedy, reversing that image requires humility and accountability that fame does not naturally encourage. What unsettles many fans is how rapidly celebration turned into mourning. One moment, Anthony Joshua dominated headlines for sporting reasons. The next, he was fighting for emotional survival. It exposes how thin the line is between victory and devastation in the lives of elite athletes. Carl Fraka's frustration reflects a wider exhaustion within